Yeah, the Shia stuff is really, really disheartening. And honestly, like, I think it was back in maybe the early, like 2020, 2021, I kind of really plunged into that whole world. And obviously with a Sunni bias, but there is a lot of justification for Sunnis to denounce Shiaism. I know that they're hypocrites as well, but Shiaism is just, it's like an open fraud to call itself Islam, um, which is somewhat kind of more redeemable than the closeted fraud that the Sunnis do. Um, Especially because, you know, it's kind of like that where you have a majority and a minority. But yeah, it's kind of perplexing, you know, like they write these books to mimic the Quran all the freaking time. It's really obnoxious too, because for most people, I really doubt many people can even like understand Arabic in Iran. I've heard that, yeah, of course, like they learn it, but it's kind of like an inside joke that the pronunciation of Arabic from Iran is like miles apart from like, you know, what you would typically be expected to do in prayer. And I guess you could say the same for most people, but that's not even the issue. The issue is the deceptiveness of what's being said there, like Allahumma salli ala Ali ibn Musa al-Rida al-Murtada al-Imam. What the heck is this? They put that on the front wall and they make it look like a book, like a mushaf. Assalamu alayka ya awliya Allah wa ahibbaha. Assalamu alayk. I can't even read it, but it's it's just open shirk. And when it comes to ziyarah is actually pretty much like one of the pillars of Islam and Shiism. So you're actually expected as a Shia, usually you're going to find yourself in one of a few locations: Iran, Iraq. They do have them in Bahrain, but Pakistan has a whole ton of them as well. And you're just probably going to make pilgrimage to one of those shrines. Interesting thing is that they usually translate the word Kaaba to shrine, which I guess makes sense, but there is a whole thing to that. It's a deeper way to look at it as well. But I would say that the interesting thing is that the largest pilgrimage officially in the world is 40 million people every year. Roundabout, they go to Karbala. Karbala is a word that represents, in the Quran, it's mentioned, not the actual word Karbala, but the word they invented it from, which is Al-Karb. Al-Karb al-Azim is in the Quran what is understood to be the flood. Both Musa and Harun, and obviously as well as Noah, they're all mentioned in that with that word. So yeah, I mean, the whole overemphasis on visiting graves, praying in the direction of graves, that's something like a child understands. Okay, like you can make all kinds of semantic arguments, right, from that position. Like, we're not calling upon other gods. We're not calling upon other deities. It's like when a mother calls to her son, her name. Oh, Ali, come here, Ali. No, it's not the same at all. Like you're talking about core principle. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. There is no one else. That's one ayah. That's, what is it, the fourth ayah in the Quran. Or fifth, I think. But it's like they kind of turn off their brains and say, no, the tradition can't be wrong. it's the logic that's wrong. It's the Quran that's wrong. So many times you'll hear that, at least I've heard from the mouths of these turbanized tire heads, because they have kind of turbans shaped like tires on their heads, that the reason why Ali's name is not mentioned in the Quran is because the Umayyads would change it. The Abbasids would change it. Imagine, they believe the Quran is subject to change. They actually reveal their deep-seated hypocrisy and kufr using their mouths. And I believe that all of the people in the world that have any affiliation with the Quran all understand the same thing, that the text is not preserved. Doesn't matter what lip service they pay and say, oh, I love, Allah, alhamdulillah, azza wa jal, and all this, and sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and nabi, and blah, blah, blah. They really don't actually they don't believe in this revelation whatsoever. They want what their fathers are assumed to have. Even though Allah tells them their fathers knew nothing, they were not guided. That's the vast majority of them. And what I see going on is just a complete utter fraud. One thing that is important is that the emphasis on graves is kind of peculiar. You wouldn't come up with that left to your own devices, because it's a dead person we're not even sure. I mean, we assume that these people are in there in those sarcophaguses. It's very like Egyptian, almost Babylonian. But Jews do the same thing. Jews have their pilgrimages in Iran and other places in the world. They actually go to places where their rabbis have deceased. So that tells me automatically this is something that possibly relates to either jinn, and it's just rehashed for the stupid humans. But that ayah in the Quran, in Surah 102, I think that's Al-Ma'un, حَتَّى زُرْتُمُ الْمُقَابِرِ. So zurtum is from the root that is for ziyarah. That's what they call this pilgrimage to shrines and graves. Ziyarah has, I think, at least from that ayah and possibly even the root itself, a negative connotation, because I can show you the same root is used in something, from what I recall, like to do with deception, lying. And I think I can probably see why they had to put that somewhere in the world, just because the Quran addresses it. So then later on they can have these esoteric, monkey brain ideas that, see, the Quran mentions Ali, and Surah Al-Fajr mentions Hussein, and blah, 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 blah.